All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first in-person club meeting for Game Development Club. We're excited to all have you, and this meeting will be our most important one, the game pitches. For anyone who's watching this recording later, you'll be able to just watch through and see all the different game pitches on YouTube. And if anyone wanted to check out a game again, we'll be posting all of the slides and all related documents on our game pitches chat, which we will send out later tonight. All right, just some quick notes before we get to the actual presentations. This is your game's MVP. It's not like a full game. Just remember that this is sort of just a prototype and a demo, just including all the important game mechanics that you want to have. We're not trying to build another Elden Souls or Elden Ring. Elden Souls. All right. But yeah, it's just to generate interest in the idea of your game. And then it's just a club project. So this is not graded. There's no competition. Your school and personal life comes first. So even if you're just participating on a team, just remember that it's focus on school, focus on your personal life. If you guys need any help, just remember all of the officers and board are available to help you, and you could ask any questions in lobby or in the questions and concerns chat. And it's normal for around the middle of the semester that development on the game slows down a bit because that's just how school is structured, and usually it's like the actual game industry where everyone rushes in the last 3 months. All right, so some quick reminders. Because we have a lot of presentations today, we're going to keep these around 5 minutes-ish. Please be respectful and quiet during other people's presentations. Please keep it PG. I don't think we'll have an issue with that, and you'll do great. All right, let's see some pitches. So we'll start off then with Tank Fort. Tank Fort is Alpha, Brian's song.
Okay, so my idea was something that is a combination of generic top-down 2D tank games, and if you've ever played it on Steam, it's a game called Ultimate Chicken Horse. And it's like a party game where you place down certain obstacles at the beginning of the round, and then after you play the round with your friends, and you have to get to a certain end point. And so I was thinking, if you combine those two together, then you can have a tank game where at the beginning phase you'll be placing down objects just like Ultimate Chicken Horse, and then after you'll be put in with how many players you're playing with, and you'll just try to fight each other with tanks, and those obstacles that you place down will hinder you or possibly help you. So initially in the build phase, you'll place some maybe Tetris pieces, styled walls and stuff, and I was thinking you can maybe also possibly damage those walls, so you can maybe have it so that you can go through them. You can have obstacles that hurt you or your opponent's tanks, and then I was thinking there could be possible map hazards or certain obstacles depending on whatever map. And yeah, after would be a battle phase where the tanks would be dropped into the field and fight each other. And you'll get it would be a round-based game. So every round, if you're the winner, then you'll get certain amount of points, and maybe you'll get also a bit of additional points for things like getting your first or being the first kill in that match, or certain other achievements. And then just like Ultimate Chicken Horse, those objects that you place at every round, those will stay for the next round. And I put in there that you could have things you can have dynamite that could destroy them, so you can have it so that it won't be locked in. And yeah, you can once a player reaches the points goal, then they'll win. So I was thinking for the MVP, we'd want to get the initial build phase and battle phase implemented, and I think the win system is also generally pretty easy to do. So I would at least think those three are the main parts, and then if we have more time, it's just more like more obstacles, possibly online multiplayer, possibly like different types of modes, maybe like where some certain or you can just place a whole bunch of obstacles at the beginning. Yeah, and then I put any group suggestions or ideas, so anybody can also put in some more ideas and we can try those. That was all.
All right, cool. Thank you very much. So, oh yeah, are there any questions for Brian's game? Let me check the chat. Sorry, can you ask your question again?
What game engine are you planning on using?
It really depends. Like, I haven't specified one because if like a group prefers a specific game engine, that's what we would want to go with. If nobody has a preference, then not sure. We'll just pick one, I guess.
All right, so we'll go to team 2, which is Angle of Attack, which is me and Raymond. Hello, everyone. I'm Laurence Garcia.
I'm Raymond.
And this is our game that we're going to be pitching called Angle of Attack.
You could do the first slide, sure. So this game is really centered around movement and player mobility. It's heavily momentum based. It's supposed to be a side scroller, and it's a multiplayer arena sort of game where players fight each other with projectile and melee weapons. All of that varies based on how quickly each player is moving.
So a few inspirations for our game. We were looking at Hyperlife Drifter. We thought about the movement from Titanfall, a little bit of like the Katana Zero type side-scrolling action, and then there's like this Mojang game called Cobalt. That's basically what we're pitching.
Our setting, we were thinking of having something in the near future with fantasy elements, so that basically. We're having different races and creatures, and one of the ideas is actually having this guy as part of the characters. And they won't interact too heavily with the gameplay. It's mostly just supposed to be a backdrop for the levels.
All right. So we'll have a couple of movement abilities. So the base movement is like A and D, and then players will only be able to heal like while on the ground, and an auto reload sort of functions on the ground as well. Jump and double jump will be on W, and then it's sort of like to have more movement, and then maybe letting go of W will allow the player to fall faster. We also want to implement a sprint button where they can sprint only left or right, and then we have a dash on our spacebar, and then it dashes on whatever direction you are currently going.
So our combat is supposed to be a little bit different than the basic combat system. The core of it is that we want damage to be dealt based on the relative movement of the enemy to the attacking player. So if you fire a bullet and you're moving, let's say 5 meters per second, and the bullet is moving 10, then total 15 meters per second, and that'll deal more or less damage based on the movement of the enemy player as well. We have projectile weapons, just went over that. A couple of constraints there so that it balances with the melee weapons down here. They don't need to be reloaded because they're swords. Shorter range attacks, and they can only attack during, not only, but they can attack during dashes and sprints. They can also parry, which is a little harder to do, but all of these attacks will cause the player or the enemy that's taking damage to also be pushed in the direction of the attack.
And then we were thinking that we can try and have maybe 4 characters, and then each character has their own different archetype. We were thinking of like a heavy axe brawler type, and then we're thinking like a shooter character that kind of throws playing cards, and then another like cowboy type character, and then we're thinking of maybe having a ninja or samurai type character.
The core components we want to be done for the game, so the minimum viable product, is working multiplayer, player movement and abilities, player health and damage, at least around 4 characters, and 1 map that we can playtest all of them on.
And then sort of some stretch goals. We were thinking of maybe a scoring system, win-loss system, a few more maps maybe, and then perhaps a tutorial to help teach new players how to play the game. Maybe some unlockables, and then we were hoping maybe to get like an AI enemy.
That's a really far stretch.
Yeah. All right, and then the programs we'll be using are Unity and Blender, since we're doing sort of a 2.5 3D style game, and then Unity for the multiplayer component.
We are looking for really anyone that's interested. Programmers are always useful. 3D artists and animators are going to play a big role because of the level of movement. We want fitting fluid animations to go with it, and music cues as well.
Sounds good. And then, yeah, that's about it. Are there any questions? Next up will be cube dancing.
All right. So cube dancing is by far the most mechanically complicated game ever conceived. You're a cube and you dance. So basically, the idea is it's based off like Dance Dance Revolution style games where you just have like 4 buttons that you have to press in time with the music. I've developed a little prototype, so I'll just show off that to give an idea of what the gameplay would be like. But there's an idea of mechanically what it is. You're manipulating these cubes, moving around, dancing in time to the music. So also shown in this video is the idea that you can have 2. So the idea being, if you want a lower difficulty challenge, you can just control one of the cubes. If you want a higher difficulty challenge, you can try doing both at the same time. So more specifically, what needs to be built? We need to have main interactions. You need to be able to press buttons to move a cube. We need a scoring system to show how good of a job you're doing. This will have like the typical trappings of any rhythm game. You know, like if you do everything perfectly, you get a perfect score at the end of the game, stuff like that. We need some kind of editor so that we can make these charts in the first place for each of the songs that we choose. This is something that in the prototype, I just kind of hacked together reading stuff from a text file, and it was a massive pain to edit. So having a nice editor is definitely necessary for this project, I think. And then finally, CPU playback, so that if you only want to play as one of the cubes, the other one can be controlled by the computer. That's also a way that we can validate the patterns we make to see that they're actually good before we try playing them. Some stretch goals, lots of GCFX. I think there's lots of room to, the minimum viable product is not very much. There's quite a limited number of mechanics for this, so there's lots of room to add in some juicy effects, make it really satisfying to play. General polish, more songs, extra sound effects is something that a lot of rhythm games have. They use a punchy sound effect whenever you get a note really on the spot, and they use kind of a dull sound effect whenever you miss it or get it off slightly. One final thing could be combos. Instead of just pressing one button at a time, they could be additional things to do to press multiple buttons at a time, but I'm not sure we'll get to that. So who should join? We'll need some programmers, beginners, and experienced are welcome. Also with the idea of adding a bunch of juicy effects, we'll also be getting into shaders. I'm pretty experienced with that, so I'm happy to teach anyone who would like to learn that. We also need artists. I put the S in parentheses because for the minimum viable product, we really only need art for the 2 cubes and maybe a background. Beyond that, anyone who's like pretty driven can join if they want to add more art to additional facets of the game, but that would be fully up to whoever joins. I don't have any plans for additional art beyond just the 2 cubes. It would also be nice to have a sound designer to add on those extra sound effects to communicate to the player whether they're doing well or poorly. Music experience is nice in general, but is not required. I'll be going over a lot of basic music theory so that we can all understand how to make a rhythm game that's satisfying. And that's it. Are there any questions?
All right.
Once again, what game engine are you using?
Probably Unity, because it has really good support for custom shaders.
All right, any other questions? All right, I think we're good. Damn, if Jordan was ready, this would have been his time to go.
Hi everyone, this is Jordan, and I wasn't able to give my pitch during the meeting, but I guess we're doing it now, so I want you to think a little bit about something. How many times have you restarted a video game? It could be due to many reasons. Maybe your current run is bad and you don't expect you'll succeed. Maybe you messed up and died and the game just restarted for you, but regardless, the more you repeat, the more you understand about the game, and the stronger you get. But on the other hand, the more predictable everything gets, the more desensitized you get, the more detached you get. In the game you're playing, your goal is to save the world, but that is turned from an act of passion into an act of obligation. Now, imagine if the protagonist of the game felt the same way you did. So I'd like to pitch to you Ouroboros. This name is subject to change, but whatever. And the idea for this game is it's a run and gun shooter, and it's defined by 2 things: difficulty and replayability. Let's break those down. So what defines this game? One of them is difficulty. So, as stated earlier, it has a steep learning curve, and it might even seem unfair at first to beginners. It takes lots of time to master, similar to arcade games. However, it's also very replayable. This means it needs to be easy to jump into and easy to grasp. It kind of, the way, when you play the game, the more you play it, the more you repeat it. Repetition leads to improvement. And these types of games lend themselves very well to challenge runs, such as getting the highest score, beating it as fast as possible, using as few items or as button presses as possible, and this also applies to a lot of arcade games as well. So, I'd like to tie this into the narrative as well, tie the grind into the narrative, where repetition, it's explored in-universe, where every new run of the game that you do, every reset and death and whatnot, the protagonist will remember the events of the previous run, and the protagonist could use that knowledge for the later ones. But since, you go through a lot of crazy stuff like dying and killing, that causes psychological stress for the main character. And eventually, this person will get detached from the rest of the world and lose all emotions, and that kind of reflects how you feel as well. The first time around, things have a lot more emotional impact, and the more you do it over and over again, you know what to expect, and it just becomes predictable. And I'd like to go over a couple things that inspired this project. So in terms of gameplay, one of them is Contra. I was thinking the game should be a run and gun shooter, and that's kind of what you do. You just run around, you shoot things, you get bigger guns, you get hit, you only have like very few hits. Very arcadey. In fact, it started out as an arcade game. Next you have I Want to Be the Guy, which is characterized by it's being very difficult, almost unfair, but it gives you lots of checkpoints and infinite retries. There's not much penalty for death besides being pushed back to your previous checkpoint, and the game, revolves around being really hard, but you memorize how it works, and then you can get further. Next, we have the Metroid series. I put series because, in general, the thing that I think should apply to this game as well is how Metroid, you could come up with different solutions to the problems outside of what the game wants you to do. You can do things in different orders, as so long as you beat the game, and it gives you a lot of flexibility. I put Fusion here as an example because this is actually the most linear in the series, the most action-oriented, and it's the most difficult. So I think it kind of exemplifies what I think would be closest to the game that I have in mind. And lastly, we have a Super Smash Bros. Melee specifically. And this game, in contrast to the rest of the series, it's a lot faster, and it provides a lot more options you could use. There are certain... you have a lot more ways to get out of certain situations, to cause certain problems, and also to move around. Movement is one thing that I would ideally like to make a focus in this game, so that's why I also think melee works very well. Now, in terms of themes and story, I'd like to go over a couple different media here. First off is Madoka Magica, an anime made in 2011, and I don't want to spoil too much about it since I think it's a very unique experience the first time around, but basically the entire idea for this game kind of stems from this character right here. Her name is Homura. So if any of you are familiar with the show, basically I want the protagonist to be a lot like Homer in this situation. Next we have Undertale, which integrates gameplay and story in the same idea where, saves and resets mean something in the world, and it affects the characters. And lastly, we have Outer Wilds, which I've actually never played, but I did read a synopsis of it, and its story also revolves around a time loop and doing the same things over and over, learning from what you experience in one life and bringing it over to the next. So, we gotta make a video game, and you gotta help us. So what are we going to do? What are we going to use for this? First off, we need a 2D game engine. And I was thinking Godot. That's what I like. I'm used to it, and I do prefer the FOSS licensing. And we also need a way to collaborate, so we'll use a version control system, Git. And personally, I host all my projects on GitLab. Aside from that, you could do whatever you're comfortable with. I just think these two things are like the constants that need to be implemented: a 2D engine and a way to have version control and collaboration. If you guys have, these are just my preferences, of course. If you have your own, let me know and we could try to work something out. And as for what kinds of roles I want in this development team, this is a very loose guideline, but I think there are 3 that are pretty necessary. First off is an artist, second is a sound designer, and lastly, which I do think is probably like the least important personally of these 3, is a programmer. So first off, a 2D artist. We need to see things on the screen. If we don't have art, we can't play the game. I'm open to any art style, whatever you think would fit the project. We could work things out, And also we need a sound designer. Sound effects, they help a lot. They contribute to the gameplay itself. When you have oral feedback, when you hear what's going on, when you, basically it helps you understand and react to things. So I do think it helps, and that's necessary. And lastly, of course, we need programming, but this is something I could do, so I don't think it's as vital to have as the other ones. However, I've never worked with 2D platformers. I've never done anything with 2D physics in games. So any other programmers that could help out with that, I'd really appreciate. Now again, these are all just loose guidelines. Of course, there are way more roles that could be useful. Anyone is welcome. We're all learning here. And even if you just want to try something new, you could join the team. If you want to try one of the previous roles that I mentioned and you've never done it before, go ahead, So yeah, it's very, very loose. I'm just thinking these guys would be useful, but anything else helps, And for the project goals, what I want to create by the end of the semester I have 2 requirements. One is have the core gameplay mechanics of movement and combat, and a single level. I've tried to keep this as minimal as possible to make it as easily attainable as possible, because honestly I've had a hard time meeting my own expectations in previous semesters. And both criteria, both number 1 and number 2, they have to encapsulate the main principles of this game, which is be difficult, have a steep learning curve, but be rewarding and replayable. The idea we're trying to go for here is a game with a high skill ceiling, where new players, when they start out, they want to reach that ceiling. They're like, this is hard, but I want to get better. And the experienced players who've been around for a while, they want to keep coming back to it because there's more to discover, more ways to play the game. They keep wanting to come back for more. Now, stretch goals are things that, we don't necessarily need to have, but it could be cool. The main gimmick of this game, the whole thing I pitched this on essentially was, this is supposed to be like a psychological horror story about repeating the same thing over and over. And, I was thinking we could have a time loop story where the repeated runs make the protagonist detached, like I said earlier, and it's supposed to mirror the player's feelings of repetition. So I was thinking go for a dark narrative and see oh man, all these situations are pretty messed up and they could really detach someone from the rest of the world. And another stretch goal could be the end boss, originally I was thinking the MVP should have a boss at the end of the level, but I just wanted to keep things as minimal, just as easy as I possibly could. But yeah, if we can add a boss, it would be great. It would be a fitting way to end the game. And the idea here is we want to make this the hardest part of the game and put all the players' skills to the test. Make sure everything you learned so far is tested. And if we have even more time, maybe we can add more levels and bosses. I don't know, we'll see. And another stretch goal, I think, is advanced techniques. So we want to have, I was thinking something that could define this game is unorthodox movement, and you have a lot of weird combat options. Again, like Melee, I mentioned that earlier. But the thing is, these things probably will come up naturally in development, rather than we have to go out of our way to make them, like wave dashing, for example. That was just a weird, fun thing that the developers discovered while testing it out, and they decided to keep it in. It became one of the main things about Melee. So I'm sure these will come up just naturally when we're messing around, when we're making the game. So that's why I consider it a stretch goal. It's not like, oh, we should absolutely go out of our way to make it as complex as possible. No, I just think it should come up if it comes up. So thanks for listening, and I hope you all have a great day.
All right, Team 5 Tech It.
My name's Corey. I've been a member of this club now for just a year. I came here both to Cal Poly and to this club last year in 2020. No, I'm going crazy. Last year was not 2020. I've been in this club for a year, and I worked on 2 different projects in the meantime, and now I'm going to go ahead and try to host my own. So Tech It is a game that I've had bouncing around in my head for a while, along with a bunch of other games like I'm sure many of us do. I chose this one because it in theory should be relatively simple to implement, so I think it should be a really good choice for sort of first-timers and people just starting out in this club, as well as anyone who just doesn't have the time to work on things like maybe myself. So Tech It draws its name from the phrase in Smash Bros, just Tech It. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. You can see our boy Captain Falcon performing a nice tech on the ground. In Smash Bros, you can perform a tech right by pressing the shield button right as you're about to hit either a wall or a floor, and that timing is really pivotal to what I am looking to create inside of Tech It, the game. It also draws inspiration primarily, actually, from this game right here, which I believe is called Rock Harden from Pokemon Stadium on the N64. I haven't actually played that game, but I saw a good amount of footage, and I like the idea behind it. So basically, these rocks will come down and rain upon your little Kakuna here. I haven't played Pokemon in a while. That's Kakuna, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the rock will come down, and you can see this guy over here is hardening. So when you hold the button, you'll harden, and you'll be safe from the rock. But if you don't harden, you'll get hit, and you'll lose some HP. Hardening, however, also requires taking some of your HP. So your goal is to just tap it so that you don't take as much HP, right? You just want to tap it once so that you don't lose as much HP when you're blocking. And that's, again, similar to what I'm going to be doing with this game. You can also see, you'll see with the arm that I'm going to show you, hopefully on the next slide, it's going to be very similar to the sand from Jetpack Joyride. That was something new. I played a lot of Jetpack Joyride when I was a kid, and I came back and I saw that, and I thought that was really fun. Yes, the GIF works. It's beautiful. So that is a super bare bones implementation of sort of my idea behind Tech It. I implemented it over the summer when I got those random spurs to be productive, like I'm sure many of us do. It's sat on my hard drive and not done anything yet, but I hope to hopefully build off of it over the course of the semester. As you guys can see from the little developer images, this was made in Godot. And that is the engine I would like to move forward with if you guys, whoever joins the team is willing to. Specifically, I use the mono version of Godot because I personally prefer developing with C#. C# is a much more ubiquitous language, right, in the industry, and it's also just one that I think will be a lot more helpful to us in the long run, like if we get familiar with C# as opposed to the native GD script, which is based on Python. So yeah, you can see sort of the bare bones implementation. The idea behind it is you're going to have these projectiles coming down by an enemy. And you're going to block them with your shield, which is controlled with your mouse. You'll obviously click to power on your shield to block the projectiles, and if you click it just right, and you just block the projectiles and then immediately let go, then you'll hopefully get some energy back in your shield so you can keep holding it for longer. So art style, I only really bring this up because I'm not very good at art in the slightest, and I felt like I needed to put into words what I had in mind. And if you're an artist and you join, you're more than welcome to take it in the direction that you want, because I don't know what I'm doing. Basically, I have this image of Photoshop Flyway up here, not because I intend to go for a style like that, but because Photoshop Flyway, the sort of giant form on the top of the screen with sort of the player down on the bottom, is sort of the same thing that I'm looking for with the actual game. So we would have like, the enemy player, the enemy, not necessarily player, but the enemy AI on top shooting down on you, and you would be the little plucky guy with the shield at the bottom. As far as, I don't intend the art to be super complicated. Again, if you join and you want to make it super complicated, that's all on you. If you want to do that, that's awesome. but I just intended to have a black background with white sprites that will just sort of block things around. MVP, I intended again to keep it relatively simple, so there isn't that much to implement. The idea behind it is we need to have an enemy capable of shooting projectiles at the player, which fundamentally is as simple as creating an object that can create other objects, with the objects being created being projectiles. Then I need to create the player shield. Right now in the demo you saw, there was no mouse clicking. It's just a box that just intercepts, sends the signal to the projectile and tells it to delete itself. It would need to get more complicated than that, so we needed to design the shield. And then we need to create the player health bar and win-loss conditions so that when the player gets hit, they take damage. When they take damage, they lose. And then finally, for the MVP, just create one enemy to play against. So basically one level of projectiles being shot at you through the block and sort of go through. And then create a main menu to go with it. To put it more simply, the way that I like to look at it is we need to create cannons that shoot. We need to create a shield that works, and then we need to make the player die. And if we do all of those things, then we're pretty much good to go. And as for team size, again, it's super fluid. As many people can join as they want to, and if you guys are a programmer or an artist, you're all welcome. I'm just here to do my best to work on the project, and I'm sure you guys are too, so as long as you're willing to work hard on the project, we're all good with it. If you're busy, that's totally fine. I'm pretty busy, so some weeks, some things just aren't going to get done, at least from my experience and some of the groups that I've had, right? Sometimes things just don't get done, and that's okay. So if we don't get done what we don't get done, that's all right, but feel free to join if you think you're going to be able to do whatever amount of work that you can. I wrote down an amount of people just because I figured that would sort of be the minimum amount of team members that we would need. But again, more can join, less can join. It's all up to you. And that's it. Got my monkey. That's all I got.
Nice. Are there any questions? Nope. All right. Sounds good. All right. Monkey. Free Jordan. All right. All right. Next up, we have Friendly JRPG.
All right, so this is my idea. Just a friendly JRPG on the face of it, which actually has like the dark secret undertones that you'll find out later. So the gameplay loop would involve talking to enemies, sort of like an Undertale or Shin Megami Tensei game, or Persona if you're familiar with that. We have family conversations, some are funny, some are not. I would like to lean more into the humor aspect of this, and focus a little bit less on complex gameplay and a little more on like funny writing. I would consider the dodging bullets aspect of like an Undertale sort of thing to be more of a stretch goal. That's not really my focus. And so, as you're recruiting enemies and like getting stronger, building up your team, there's also a shopkeeper who sells you items. You can use those to heal and stuff like that. More importantly, he can give you some advice. He's like a friendly guy in this relatively more harsh world where enemies are all fighting you all the time. However, he does have a dark secret. He or she is hiding something. You can accept this. Basically, they're going to offer you a deal at any point in time that you can accept. So you don't have to accept it right away. You can accept it at any point in time. However, this will lead to like the darker secret part of the game, where the game gets a little bit darker. And this is why you need to recruit lots of enemies, because that's when the game gets more challenging. Otherwise, if you try to challenge, you could technically challenge it at the beginning of the game if you wanted to be like really hardcore. But most people, it's going to be too difficult, and so they're going to need a starter team. And so I would like all kinds of people to join this, musicians, artists, writers, everyone's welcome, at beginner, advanced, all kinds of levels. So yeah. Cool. And then I'll post this in the meeting general. And for game engine, since I know someone's going to ask that, I'm personally most familiar with Game Maker. However, I'm leaning towards learning a different game engine just so I can learn for myself. So I'm open to like Godot, Unity, those are both good. RPG Maker is also a good one. So I haven't decided on that one yet, but Whoever's on my team, I would like to talk more about that.
Sounds good. Are there any questions?
You mentioned fighting. What's combat?
JRPG combat. So, like turn-based? Yeah, turn-based.
All right. Any other questions? All right, cool. All right. Cool. All right, next up, last but not least, we have Diode. I mispronounced that again. All right. And then that should be Diode. Oh. All right.
Okay, so this is my game pitch. I'm Angel Vasquez. This is my game pitch for a game called Diode, and my friend Alan helped me out a lot with this. So, yeah. So basically, we just to set the stage here. Humans are really good problem solvers, and civilization stems from solving problems, and we make progress by seeking out ways to get over obstacles in our life. And we've gotten so good at this that we start creating our own problems to solve for entertainment. But what if this power of critical thinking and problem solving was extended beyond humans? Computers have been getting scarily good at this, and this is what Diode is all about. So, Diode is a 2D puzzle platformer with a simple concept, bringing a key to the door. And of course, that sounds very simple in concept. You get the key, and you go to the door, and you proceed to the next room. Life is never really that simple, and the task of the game's main character, a humanoid AI, which is being trained for this very purpose, is to figure out how to get the key to the door in the face of everything that may stand between them. Now, the concept for this game is heavily inspired by Donkey Kong for the Game Boy, which is often known as Donkey Kong 94, and it's a successor Mario vs. Donkey Kong. And in fact, this project started off as a personal project, which was just called DK Clone. Now, these games had a very wide range of movement, and that gave the player a lot of freedom when traversing the levels, because there may have been a obvious way that was intended to solve the level, but you didn't necessarily have to do that. Like, for example, this clip in the middle here, where I've completely ignored the moving platform that you need to turn on in order to get the key. So this made it fun for both those who were new to the game and those who have already mastered the mechanics. And this flexibility and diversity in movement is one of the core components of Diode. After all, a vital part of developing a convincing AI is allowing it to find its own solutions, much like a human would. So let's talk about the player's movement options. The basic movement options we have are walking, jumping, crouching, and climbing ladders. And this should be enough to just traverse the level and solve simple puzzles. However, that doesn't quite allow for the type of creative solutions that I mentioned before. So for that, we have to get into the additional movement. Now, the first of this is the backflip. I should note most of these abilities are lifted straight out of the inspiration. So it's a very fast way to get extra vertical height. However, it has a really small execution window and leaves the player vulnerable. Excuse me. So it's fast, but it could be punishing. And then there's the handstand, which is slower, and it achieves the same vertical height, but it allows for extra precision, and it does not leave you nearly as vulnerable. And of course, picking up and throwing objects is another core movement mechanic, because it's crucial to solving puzzles. However, it also limits your movement options to basic jumping and walking. So occasionally you have to throw objects around in order to make a complex traversal possible. And of course, a fleshed out movement system on its own doesn't make for a complete game. It needs purpose, and which in this case is the puzzles. A key puzzle mechanic is, well, the key. The key needs to be taken all the way to the exit door of the level, but the limitations of holding the object still apply to the key. The key can also only be left unattended for a brief period before it returns to its initial position. And enemies are another level mechanic that we plan to add. The enemies can be hazards, but they can also be used as tools for the player in order to cross hazardous gaps, push the player, launch it, and they can also take out other enemies. And these are just some of the potential ways that the player can use these hazards to their advantage. And another thing that's lifted straight out of the game's inspiration is the colored switches. And these allow for color-coded objects such as blocks and ladders, barriers, that would otherwise be inaccessible if the switch was not pressed to be enabled. And only one of these can be pressed at a time, so the player has to get creative in their execution of the puzzle solution. So for our minimum viable product, we most certainly want to implement the movement mechanics we laid out, and we would also like to have a small set of puzzles utilizing the level mechanics mentioned earlier, those being the key, enemies, and switches. And in terms of stretch goals, we definitely have some. So of course, the core of the game is very basic, so it shouldn't be too difficult to get all of that stuff implemented into the minimum viable product. So just adding extra mechanics as a stretch goal, I think, is good, because that would allow us to add more complexity to the levels and just have a wider diversity, and maybe implementing simple dialogue to add to the setting and story, which is, we have a small idea, but it's not fleshed out, so I haven't quite elaborated on that in here. And then as for positions, we're making the game in Godot. I have a small prototype, however, that should probably be reworked. So we could definitely use some programmers, level designers, pixel artists. You can see clearly my artistic ability is not the best here. Sound effects and music, people who can make sounds and music, and just anyone who wants to come up with ideas would be definitely appreciated as well. And anyone of any skill level is welcome. So that's basically it. We look forward to working with any of you and hope that all of us can learn a great deal from the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Angel? All right, team 3, Enro Ramirez. And then, are you in person or team 3? Oh, okay, cool. All right, floor is yours.
Make sure. The arrows like to alternate back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Rene. This is like a start of something amazing. It's called Ramirez 3 or Ramirez Trio, if you prefer. Again, the plot. A trio of strangers, soon-to-be friends, go through their own issues in their lives and have to take them on one at a time, from needing money to save a family-owned business for generations to starting a new family of their own in this present day and age. However, a flyer for a video game tournament on TV up here for a grand total of $250K is enough to invest to change the character's life for the better. Determination is what gets their hopes up and will prevail no matter what. Versus it's either fight or flight, and that's the idea. Any conflicts or antagonists? Each character gets an antagonist based on when and where the story goes. Nobody is without their conflicts, and that especially applies to their opponents. In other words, for every Goku, there's a Vegeta, and for like a Captain America to a Red Skull. It's still in development, like for enemies and opponents they'll come across in a long way. First character, Ren Ramirez, or just, yeah. He's currently trying his best to keep his family's house from being foreclosed. It's his life. He'll stop at nothing to keep it from shutting down. Resilience and weakness are what give him his strength. Persona 2, Rene Ramirez, currently a Twitch/YouTuber with the motivation to boost his career by any means necessary. Values those who are nobodies like Ant Dude, Nitro Red, and AVGN. Set on money, exposure, and meeting his idols who plan to tend it as well. That's my third one. Ramona Ramirez, in a relationship with her new boyfriend, husband/father with their newborn child, Zelda. Needs money to support her family, and her job isn't paying her enough. The best jobs she has, it barely covers it, because when you're starting a new family, it's pricey. At this point, money does all the talking. You just pay for it. Gameplay and layout. Each character gets their own episode when selecting. Stories, characters, the setting, the plot. While there are 3 episodes, there's a 4th, but it can only be unlocked by playing the previous 3 episodes. let's see. And then there's a difficulty working with starting a new game. And this is where I got like my inspiration. Like, whenever it comes to making games, you gotta ask yourself, how difficult do you want it to be? Do you want it to be? Should it be like easy when you start off and gets progressively difficult when you work your way through? And that could be it, but I decided to go to another route. And I thought, what game had the idea or series that started a whole trend? I went back to a good FPS series, Doom, with its difficulty. And so I decided to make my own. Here it is, like 5 difficulties, but in reality there's 3. For newcomers and not tryhards, it's basically the equivalent of I'm Too Young to Die. Doom really had some really good ideas, and I felt like I wanted to add my own. You've played this before and you somewhat get it. Same thing as easy. Not too easy, but not too hard either. It's basically medium. And life is unfair, and 2020 is like basically hard. Like, that's how it works. And for the last part right there, 2020, warning, rest in peace to your controller and system. I added that just to add a little joke right there, because when you're playing on the hardest difficulty, you're gonna rage quit. That's a guarantee. What do I know? Anything else? That's about it for now. Ideas like these took a lot out of me, and I'm not without my limits, and that's saying a lot. Remember, this is still a prototype, and there will be changes along the way. All this took me an entire week to even think of and to put into perspective. It's still developing, but that's not going to stop me from trying, because that's the end goal. That is the end.
Cool. Are there any questions?
Yeah?
So what would be the genre of the game?
Adventure and slice of life.
Is it kind of like a visual novel, or is it more different?
It's more different.
Okay.
Is that it?
All right. Any other questions?
Anyone else?
So what's the actual gameplay of the game be?
I've yet to come up with that. I've yet to come up with it. Like I said, it took me the entire weekend just to even come up with the ideas. For gameplay, that's still yet to be determined.
And then Solomon had a question? Oh, okay. And then,
What's your plan for like an MVP?
For an MVP, I'm not too sure, to be honest. It's still a work in progress. But for the most part, yeah, I'll see what I can do.
and channel. And then just a few last announcements for the club. There's going to be a workshop video this Friday that covers that goes over cover letters. That's going to be pretty important. And then next week's meeting, we're actually going to be having a guest speaker from Avenda Health to talk about their research using AI to treat cancer cells. Also a reminder that we have club merch, and it comes with a membership for the club. Please contact Lorenzo, who is Enzo, wait up. Yeah, Enzo equal Janista, one of the two. They'll just message each other. All right. All right. And then that is pretty much it for the meeting. Thank you. Cool. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. Okay, Jordan's typing in chat. No, we can't hear you. We cannot. Oh boy. All right. That was Josh. Do you, someone can go before? All right, Jordan, are you able to get your audio fixed? All right, I will, okay, cool. All right, so we'll go to team 2. Oh yeah, we can hear you.
I can't stream. I'm actually doing this on my phone now.
Okay, do you want me to stream for you?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you so much,
I will do that.
Yeah, sorry, everyone, for the issues here.
You good, Jordan?
Wait a minute. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so here's
The font didn't show up right. No.
It's okay. Oh, wait.
It's supposed to be white text, but it's black. Oh, Lord.
All right.
I might actually need to pitch this another time. Oh boy, this is.
We'll send out, you can fix up the PowerPoint and then we'll send it out later today, or if you want.
Actually, I do have a fixed version of the PowerPoint on my computer. I'm just not sure I have enough time. Maybe could Team 3 go first, and then I'll see if I could do it up first.
All right, sounds good. Jordan, are you able to go? He did. An officer chat. Okay. Okay, let me download. Look. Well, what's more cursed? All right. Wow. Jordan, it's only one slide. No, I'm kidding. All right, let us know whenever you're ready. He's typing in chat. I can't unmute. Should we go to the next person? We need a compilation after game pitches. We'll just put on our channel, Jordan compilation. All right, I'll say let's move on to the next person for now. All right. Damn, if Jordan was ready, this would have been his time to go.